Have you ever noticed that some people pull away from you, even without any apparent reason? As if your presence, even when silent, is enough to cause discomfort, envy, or even a certain fear. Maybe you've seen friends change their behavior, family members treat you with more coldness, or colleagues avoid deep conversations with you, and deep down you wonder, what's wrong with me? The answer might surprise you. There's nothing wrong. In fact, there's something very special your aura speaks before any words. Few understand, but the more you grow, mature, and become authentic, the more your presence expands and impacts those around you. Your energy isn't neutral. It attracts or repels, inspires or unsettles, depending on the emotional and spiritual state of those who cross your path. Some people are naturally drawn to your truth. Others, without even realizing it, react with resistance, envy, or even withdrawal. And the most intriguing part, you might be intimidating, unsettling, or provoking others without even noticing. In this video, we'll reveal the 9 clear signs that your aura is affecting the people around you, not as a flaw, but as a natural expression of your spiritual and emotional strength. More than just listing behaviors, we'll understand, through the lens of Buddhist wisdom and self-awareness, why your presence can cause discomfort, how it's perceived, and above all, how to transform this invisible force into a tool for connection, healing, and truth. Because denying who you are doesn't solve anything, but learning to harmonize your presence is an act of profound maturity. So take a deep breath and stay with me until the end, because the final sign is the most important and possibly the one you've never noticed about yourself. This video isn't just about how others perceive you, but about how you can finally perceive yourself. About how to use this invisible force your aura not as a barrier that pushes people away, but as a bridge that connects, heals, and inspires. And if, by the end of this content, it resonates with you, write in the comments, I accept the strength of my presence. That will be your first step toward embracing who you are, with courage, love, and awareness. Perhaps you've never stopped to notice, but there's something in you that has always been present. Your energy, your aura, your unique way of being in the world. From early on, you may have felt different, not because you were better or worse, but because you seemed to perceive the world in a more intense, sensitive, and profound way. While others were content with the surface, you picked up on the invisible, sensed emotions, understood silences. And all of this happens not by choice, but because you were born this way with an aura that cannot be hidden. Buddhism teaches us that every being manifests, through their energy, a unique expression of the flow of life. And there are those who, even without realizing it, carry a more intense, magnetic, transformative vibrational field. These people draw attention, provoke reactions, evoke deep feeling 7 if their intention is simply to go unnoticed. Perhaps you're one of these people, someone whose mere presence already shifts the environment, invites reflection, sparks movement, and that's your mark, your gift, your energetic signature. If you recognize yourself in this profile, it's crucial to understand there's nothing wrong with you. Your aura isn't excessive, it's not a flaw, it's not something you need to hide or soften to please others. On the contrary, it's the most authentic expression of your soul, the silent strength you carry, and that often explains why the relationships, environments, and experiences you live are different, more challenging, more intense. Your presence invites others to see themselves, and not everyone is ready for that. Many people will be drawn to you seeking comfort, inspiration, or healing. Others will pull away, unsettled by the depth your energy brings, by the impossibility of remaining hidden or inauthentic around you. This is the natural path of those with a strong aura, to provoke movement, even unintentionally. That's why it's important to recognize and accept this dimension of your existence, not as a burden, but as a gift. You didn't come to the world to conform, but to be presence, to be truth, to be transformation. No matter if until now you've tried to fit in, dim yourself, or stay silent to be accepted. Now you know your aura is a legitimate and necessary expression of who you are. It communicates before words, speaks through your actions, invites through your presence, and those with the sensitivity and courage will draw closer. Those without will pull away, and that's okay. You no longer need to hide who you are. You only need to keep being who you were born to be. So, before we dive into the specific signs that show your aura can indeed intimidate, provoke, or unsettle those unprepared, I invite you to embrace this in yourself as something natural, legitimate, and sacred. Not everyone will understand, not everyone will value, not everyone will stay. But this isn't about them. It's about you, your journey, the silent beauty of your presence in the world. You are a living invitation to transformation, and there's nothing more beautiful than that. Now that you understand the depth of the aura you carry, the silent impact of your presence, and the unique strength in simply being who you are, let's get to the signs. Pay attention, because you may never have named these experiences, but now, with awareness, you'll be able to recognize, embrace, and walk your path with even greater clarity and maturity. Perhaps one of the subtle stand at the same time, most painful signs that your aura intimidates people without you realizing is the recurring feeling of loneliness, even when surrounded by others. No matter how many friends are nearby, how many conversations happen, or how many spaces you enter, there's always an invisible layer that seems to separate you from others. A kind of subtle barrier that prevents connections from being fully spontaneous or unguarded. And often, you don't even understand why. This loneliness doesn't stem from an inability to connect, but from the silent strength your presence carries. Your aura is likely so intense, so marked by a deep spiritual process, conscious or not, that it creates a dense vibrational field that many people struggle to cross easily. Your presence, unintentionally, acts like a mirror for others, forcing them to confront parts of themselves they'd rather keep dormant. And in response, the natural tendency is withdrawal or superficiality. That's why you often feel out of place, even when you're technically in. It's as if you participate in social rituals but never fully blend in, never feel entirely understood. This is one of the hardest signs to identify, as it's easily mistaken for shyness, introspection, or even antisocial behavior. But the truth is deeper. Your energy is so strong that unconsciously, many choose to keep their distance, even if you're smiling and welcoming. Buddhism teaches that the more we cultivate a refined spiritual presence, the more we move away from connections driven by superficiality, neediness, or attachment. This doesn't mean you isolate yourself, but that your energy naturally begins to select effortlessly with whom you form true bonds. And so, it's natural that most social interactions become fleeting, shallow, or even uncomfortable. It's not rejection, it's a consequence of your spiritual process. If you feel this loneliness even when surrounded by people, you may never have realized that it's not a flaw, but a silent sign that your aura, without you noticing, commands respect, creates distance, demands depth. And not everyone is ready to enter that space. Many prefer light, disconnected, safe interactions. Your presence, which calls for truth, presence, and soul simply, intimidates those unwilling to go that deep. When understood, this sign stops being a source of suffering and becomes a key to self-awareness. You begin to see that this apparent loneliness is, in fact, an invitation to loving selectivity. It's not about being inaccessible, but about understanding that your energy calls for more authentic, present, whole encounters, and there's nothing wrong with that. On the contrary, it's a sign that you're honoring your own spiritual evolution. So, if you recognize yourself in this sign, don't fight it. Don't try to force yourself to fit into groups or spaces where your presence feels too big or too different. Accept that, at times, being alone in a crowd is a sign that you're vibrating at a frequency few can sustain right now. And that's okay. In time, you'll see that this loneliness isn't absence, but space for when the right connections happen, they'll be deeply true. Perhaps you've noticed, in some situations, people who barely know you or have just met you quickly try to diminish your presence, make jokes that put you down, or subtly invalidate what you express. It's not an outright attack, but a veiled attempt to undermine your strength, your knowledge, your energy. And you wonder, why does this happen if I didn't even do anything? The answer may lie precisely in the silent potency of your aura. When your energy is naturally intense, even if you're quiet, people feel it. They sense, unconsciously, that there's something in you that doesn't submit, that doesn't easily bend to social norms, that doesn't need validation. And for those still deeply entangled in the need for acceptance, this is highly uncomfortable. So, as an automatic defense, many try to neutralize your presence by diminishing, criticizing, or making you feel inadequate. What you need to understand is that this isn't personal, but an unconscious reaction to the impact your aura creates. Buddhist wisdom teaches that everything strong and true tends to initially provoke resistance. When someone is tied to a fragile self-image, simply encountering an authentic, aligned presence can feel like a threat, like a mirror exposing their own disconnection. And in response, subtle attacks emerge as a form of self-protection. Perhaps, throughout your life, you've been advised to tone it down, to not draw so much attention, to not be so intense. Such advice, though often well-meaning, only reinforces the mistaken idea that your presence is a problem. But the truth is different. Your presence is an invitation, an opportunity for transformation, not just for you, but for those who come near. The discomfort it causes is, most often, the prelude to a chance for growth. Buddhism speaks of accepting others' reactions as part of the flow of life, without resisting or identifying with them. What others do or say, especially when they feel threatened, says more about them than about you. So, when you notice this pattern, people trying to diminish or invalidate your strength, breathe, pause, and stay grounded. Your strength doesn't need defending, it just needs to be lived with serenity and awareness. This sign is important because, if not well understood, it can lead you to self-sabotage, to hide your light, to dim your expression, to avoid conflict or rejection. But that would be the path of self-abandonment. The true spiritual path is different. It's about honoring your presence, respecting your intensity, and understanding that, while some may feel uncomfortable, others will be deeply inspired and healed just by being near you, even if they never say so. So, when someone tries to diminish you, remember, it's not personal, it's energetic. Your aura is like a living flame that illuminates, but can also dazzle those not yet ready for the light. And that's okay. Your task isn't to extinguish that flame, but to carry it with humility, strength, and compassion. This way, you'll become not just a strong presence, but a wise one, capable of inspiring silent transformation in others, simply by being who you are. Have you noticed that often people start opening up to you, sharing intimate stories, traumas, or deep fears, even when you haven't shown any intention of listening or advising? They feel, somehow, compelled to speak, to bare themselves emotionally, as if your presence were a safe space where they can finally be who they are. This is one of the subtle and most revealing signs that your aura has a powerful, yet silent, impact. What happens in these moments isn't random. Your energy, without you realizing, emits a frequency of warmth, depth, and presence that few can sustain. People sense that you're not superficial, that you're not interested in empty chatter, and that you have a rare ability to listen not just to words, but to what lies beneath. The emotions, the silences, the disguised cries for help. Your aura unintentionally creates this therapeutic spiritual space. According to Buddhist wisdom, every being emits vibrations corresponding to their inner state. When someone cultivates a high level of awareness, compassion, and presence, they naturally become a point of attraction for those who, even unconsciously, seek relief, healing, or understanding. It's not that you want to be everyone's confidant, but your clean, steady energy acts like a magnet for souls carrying unresolved pain who suddenly feel they can trust you. This phenomenon, while a blessing, can also be draining. Often you find yourself absorbing stories, anguish, and suffering from people you're not even close to. They seek you out because they feel you won't judge, that you'll listen without interrupting, that you can hold their pain without flinching at its weight. But without awareness, you might end up carrying an emotional burden that's not yours, depleting your own energy. That's why it's crucial to recognize that this sign, while showing your aura's magnetic and welcoming power, also demands greater discernment and self-awareness. Buddhism teaches the practice of non-attachment, including to others' suffering. Listen, hold space, but don't carry. Feel, but don't identify. This way, you protect your own energy, staying available to help without sacrificing your emotional and spiritual health. This sign also reveals that your presence, while it may intimidate or unsettle some, is also perceived as a source of healing and relief by others. The same vibrational field that repels those unready for depth attracts those seeking exactly that, a space to finally be true. And this is one of the greatest gifts you can offer the world, a presence that invites authenticity, vulnerability, and transformation. So, honor this sign as both a gift and a responsibility. Know that your aura is a beacon that inevitably shines, but also attracts those desperately seeking light. Cultivate practices to keep your energetic field clean and balanced, so you can continue being this safe, loving space not out of obligation, but because it's the natural expression of your awakened soul. And this is one of the most beautiful legacies you can leave. Perhaps you've noticed, when you start talking about certain topics, many people withdraw, change the subject, or simply pull away. You want to discuss self-awareness, spirituality, transformation, the meaning of life, but the environment seems to have no room for these conversations. Others prefer talking about lighter, superficial, or fleeting things. And you, not quite understanding, feel out of place, as if you're too much for that context. This is a clear mark of an intense aura that intimidates those not yet ready to go so deep. This sign isn't about arrogance or superiority, but about the fact that throughout your journey, you've naturally gravitated toward topics that transcend the immediate everyday. You seek to understand the workings of the soul, the mysteries of existence, the spiritual processes that shape life. While many shy away from these reflections to maintain an illusion of security, you've chosen to face them. And this subtly but profoundly transforms your energy. Your presence begins to carry the vibration of these existential questions. Buddhism teaches that the search for truth is an inevitable path for those who awaken, and those who walk this path start to notice that not everyone wants to join them. Many prefer to stay in the safer, more predictable layers of life, avoiding any reflection that might shake their certainties. So, when you speak, when you express yourself authentically, you end up causing, even unintentionally, discomfort, because your search, your depth, your presence demand a level of listening and openness that not everyone is willing to offer. Over time, you may have learned to calibrate this. You choose carefully who to share your ideas with, avoid starting certain conversations, or stay silent in spaces where you sense there's no room for depth. And still, you may often feel misunderstood, out of place, or even misinterpreted. Many might think you're too intense, too complicated, or that you're always philosophizing. In reality, you're just being true to your essence, which can no longer live superficially. This sign is important because it reveals how much your aura has been shaped by a deep spiritual journey, even if you don't recognize it as such. Your energy communicates what you value and seek before you even speak. And those who sense this, even unconsciously, may pull away, change the subject, or avoid you, simply because they don't want or can't engage at that level of depth. And that's okay. It's not personal rejection, but a reflection of each person's spiritual moment. The challenge here is not to feel inadequate or lonely because of this. Buddhism speaks of non-attachment, even to expectations about others. You don't need everyone to share your depth or understand your search. The most important thing is to honor who you've become, to keep cultivating your sensitivity, your search, and your truth, even if it means some connections drift away. Because others, more authentic ones, will inevitably arise, drawn by the same vibration you emit. So, if you notice that your conversations and interests push away those who prefer to keep things superficial, don't see this as a problem to fix, but as a clear sign of the strength and integrity of your aura. Your presence no longer allows games, masks, or trivialities. And that's a gift, not a flaw. Keep being who you are, and trust. The depth that pushes some away today will be exactly what draws those truly ready to walk by your side. One of the most painful and yet most common signs for those with an intense, strong aura is being constantly misunderstood. Even though you're a sensitive, attentive, empathetic person, you're often seen as cold, distant, or even arrogant. This happens not because of your actions, but because your presence creates an initial impression that many struggle to decipher. Your aura conveys strength, introspection, and depth, and those unaccustomed to this vibration tend to mistake it for disdain or superiority. This misunderstanding stems from the difficulty many have in dealing with presences that don't immediately seek approval or superficial connection. You're not comfortable with empty or forced interactions and prefer silence or withdrawal over the need to always be available or pleasing. And because of this, onlookers may think you're too closed off, hard to reach, or, in the worst cases, arrogant. But in truth, all you're doing is respecting your own space and energy. Buddhism reminds us that true presence doesn't depend on outward expressions, but on the quality of consciousness we carry. Often, those with a strong aura speak less, gesture less, and carry themselves with more sobriety and caution. This creates, for those living in haste and superficiality, the illusion that you don't want to connect or that you feel superior, when in reality what exists is simply a more solid, centered, quieter presence. And this silence intimidates. You've likely experienced situations where, upon expressing yourself, people were surprised by your kindness, your listening, your sensitivity, precisely because they expected someone cold or indifferent. This shock happens because your appearance, behavior, or simply your energy often creates an initial barrier that only those who persist can cross. And unfortunately, many don't persist. They prefer to label and pull away. This can be painful, especially for someone like you who values true connections. This sign, though difficult, is also an invitation to self-awareness. It asks you to accept that your energy communicates things before you even speak, and that you can't always control how others interpret your presence. Buddhism teaches the practice of detachment, including from the image others form of us. It's not about closing off or defending yourself, but about understanding that everyone perceives reality through their own level of consciousness, and not everyone can see beyond the surface. By embracing this sign, you start to realize you don't need to change who you are or soften your presence to be accepted. Your strength, introspection, depth, these are qualities that reflect your spiritual process, your emotional maturity, your true search. And those ready to cross that initial layer of protection will find in you not coldness, but warmth, not arrogance, but sensitivity, not distance, but a genuine, whole, rare presence. And those are the connections truly worth having. So, if you're often misunderstood as arrogant or distant, embrace this not as a flaw, but as a natural reflection of the intensity and solidity of your aura. Your presence is too strong to be quickly understood. And that's okay. Keep being who you are and trust. Those who need and deserve to get close will recognize the beauty in that silence, that strength, that depth. You simply cannot and should not hide. Perhaps, from a young age, you felt you occupied a different place in your family. While others easily adapted to traditions, values, and established patterns, you were always seen as the one who questions, who doesn't fit, who thinks or feels too much. This often silent perception makes you carry, even unintentionally, the sense of being the different one, the difficult one, or even the misunderstood one within the family unit. And though painful, this is a clear sign of the singular strength of your energy. Your aura, without you realizing, carries a vibration that breaks with what's simply repeated, with what's accepted without reflection. While many in the family follow models, beliefs, or patterns passed down through generations, you feel and express the desire to seek something beyond, to break with what doesn't make sense, to live with more authenticity. And this inevitably causes discomfort in those who prefer to maintain what's always been, simply because it's always been that way. Buddhist wisdom reminds us that every being follows their own path of evolution, and not everyone awakens in the same lifetime or at the same time. So, when someone in a family begins to walk a more conscious spiritual path, vibrating at a higher or more questioning frequency, it's natural to become, in others' eyes, a strange, unsettling, even threatening figure. Your presence becomes, without you intending, a symbol of the risk of change, and many, out of fear, prefer to label you as the different one. This sign shows up in small ways. You bring up topics no one wants to discuss, express feelings everyone prefers to hide, reject traditions others hold sacred, or simply withdraw from conversations and spaces that no longer nourish you. In response, you hear things like, "You're too complicated. Why can't you be like everyone else?" Or "You're always overthinking." These reactions don't point to a flaw in you, but to others' difficulty in handling your intensity and your search. Over time, you may have learned to stay quiet, avoid certain gatherings, or feel out of place at family events or reunions. Not out of disdain, but because you realize the emotional space there is too small for the vastness of the questions within you. Buddhism teaches that we shouldn't force others to change, but rather cultivate compassion for those not yet ready to break through illusions. And this compassion includes understanding that your family, as much as they may love you, might not be able to fully understand you. Far from being a burden, this sign can be seen as a call to embrace, with serenity, the role of being a point of rupture and possibility in your family system. You might be the first to seek more awareness, more authenticity, more spiritual freedom, and that's an act of courage few can sustain. It's no wonder your presence causes discomfort, but it's precisely this discomfort that, in the future, may inspire changes, healing, and reconciliations that seem impossible today. So, if you feel seen as the different, difficult, or misunderstood one in your family, don't carry this as guilt or rejection. See it as a clear sign of the silent potency of your aura, your search, your path, and remember, everyone moves at their own pace. Your mission isn't to be accepted at all costs, but to keep being true, cultivating your peace, your presence, and your freedom even if, for now, that means walking in silence, planting the seed of a transformation that may take generations to bloom. Those who walk the spiritual path with seriousness know there comes a moment when you can no longer hide who you've become. Your search, your sensitivity, your worldview, all of this starts to shine through in how you speak, act, and look. Even when you're not trying to convince or preach, your spirituality becomes a living part of your presence. And inevitably, this presence sparks reactions. For some, it's inspiration. For others, resistance or discomfort. Buddhism reminds us that spiritual truth doesn't please everyone. The very existence of someone who's chosen to step out of autopilot and live with more awareness represents a silent invitation, and not everyone wants or is ready to be invited to awaken. So, it's natural to notice, in certain spaces or relationships, an inexplicable resistance, a pulling away, an attempt to downplay or even ridicule your search, not out of malice but as a defense. Many people, when faced with someone living more consciously, feel confronted in their own choices. Your spirituality, even if silent, highlights what they prefer not to see. Their fears, attachments, inconsistencies, and in response, there may be jokes, veiled criticism, or even withdrawal. Not because you're radical or inflexible, but because your energy calls for depth, and not everyone is willing to dive in. This sign can be painful, especially when it comes from close relationships. Friends, family, colleagues. You share what you feel, offer a lesson learned, or simply stay silent, but you sense the discomfort in the air. The conversation shifts, the person pulls away or changes mood, and you wonder, did I do something wrong? No, you didn't. You simply allowed your spirituality to become a visible part of your existence, and for many, that's unsettling. The Buddhist teaching of the middle way reminds us that spirituality shouldn't be used to impose or judge others, but it also shouldn't be hidden to avoid discomfort. The balance lies in living your spirituality naturally, knowing it may provoke resistance, but that this shouldn't dictate your expression. You don't need to apologize for who you are or soften your search to fit in. Embracing this sign means understanding that your spirituality is a natural filter. It pushes away those unready and draws in those seeking the same. Your presence becomes a kind of silent call, resonating with those who have spiritual ears to hear. So even if some doors close, others will open more authentic, deeper, more aligned with who you've become. The resistance you feel today isn't rejection, but a reflection of processes beyond your control. So, if you notice that your spirituality unsettles or sparks resistance in those around you, embrace this with serenity and compassion. Don't hide, don't defend, don't harden. Keep living your search, your practice, your presence with humility and truth. Those who need to pull away, let them. Those who need to draw closer, let them. Your soul didn't come to please, it came to evolve. And your spirituality is both your compass and your gift to the world. As you progress in your journey of self-awareness, mature emotionally, achieve more balance, or make significant life changes, you may have noticed a subtle but deeply striking phenomenon. Some close people, friends, family, colleagues start to pull away, react with coldness, or even with a silent disdain. You didn't do anything to provoke this, didn't flaunt your achievements, didn't belittle anyone. And still, you sense in the air a resistance, a tension, an energy of judgment or even envy. This sign is more common than we think, but it's often unnamed, making the experience even more painful. After all, you'd expect those who've walked with you for years to celebrate your transformations, your new choices, your progress. But what happens is that the more you become who you truly are, more aligned, more conscious, freer, the more your presence becomes a mirror for others, revealing the areas where they're still stuck or stagnant. Buddhism teaches that our presence communicates far more than our words. You don't need to boast about victories or talk about changes for others to notice you're different. Your aura shifts, your posture shifts, your gaze shifts, and those close to you feel it. For those ready, this inspires, but for those still gripped by fear, insecurity, or attachment to the old, it unsettles, provokes, destabilizes. And often, the natural reaction is resistance or disguised envy. This envy is almost never overt. It shows up in small ways. Criticism masked as irony, attempts to downplay your achievements, silent withdrawals, jokes about your choices, or, most painfully, sudden indifference where there was once warmth and support. Suddenly, what you share with joy is met with coldness or disbelief. You start to realize your presence unsettles, not because you've become arrogant, but because you dared to change, and this highlights the fear many have of change. This sign is especially hard to handle when it comes from loved ones, family, childhood friends, colleagues you've shared years with. You want them to grow with you, to be inspired by your transformation. But it's not always like that. Buddhism reminds us that every being is at their own pace, in their own time, and not everyone is ready to handle another's change. Often, it's easier to resist, criticize, or envy than to face the need to evolve too. And this isn't malice, it's fear, it's pain, it's unconscious. Recognizing this sign is also an invitation to compassion, not to accept emotional abuse or toxic relationships, but to understand that the reactions you receive aren't a judgment of who you are, but a reflection of the inner battles of those around you. Your presence, your strength, your evolution, whether spiritual, emotional, or material, inevitably provokes effects. And your mission isn't to dim your light to comfort those who fear their own, but to keep shining with humility and strength. So, if you feel your growth sparks envy, discomfort, or resistance in those close to you, embrace this sign with maturity. Don't let it paralyze or shrink you. Honor your journey, maintain your integrity, and trust. Those ready will be inspired. Those unready will pull away. And that's okay. That's the natural flow of life. Your task is to keep being who you are, with courage and love, remembering that your presence is a silent invitation to transformation, but never an obligation for those who choose to stay where they are. If you've made it this far, you've realized that what you often interpreted as rejection, distance, or resistance from others is in fact a direct reflection of the strength you carry. Your presence isn't small, isn't neutral, doesn't go unnoticed, and though this may have caused pain and doubts throughout your life, it's actually a sign that you're someone who transforms, impacts, and invites change just by existing. Your aura isn't an obstacle, it's a silent call for others to awaken too. Now you understand, your energy isn't limited to what you do or say, but is a direct expression of who you've become and, above all, who you've chosen to be. Despite the world's attempts to box you in, diminish, or silence you. Perhaps for a long time you tried to conform, to be lighter, less intense, more acceptable. But the truth is, your soul didn't come to fit others' molds, but to be a living invitation to authenticity, presence, and transformation. Of course, not everyone will understand or embrace your presence. Some will avoid you, others will judge, some will even harbor envy or discomfort, not because you're aggressive, but because your existence breaks through the comfort of superficiality. And that's okay. Buddhism teaches that every being walks at their own pace, with their own needs and fears. Your mission isn't to please, but to remain true, whole, and serene, even when the path feels lonely. So, now that you recognize the strength of your aura, I invite you to honor it. Don't hide it, don't dim it, don't deny it. Use it as a bridge, a channel for connection, a space for healing. Your presence is needed, especially in a world so starved for truth, so thirsty for authentic references. And if this content touched you in some way, if you felt it mirrored your experience, leave a like, not just as a mechanical gesture, but as an affirmation. I accept who I am. Take the chance to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, we dive deep into topics that go beyond appearances, that speak to the soul, to spirituality, to the truth the world often tries to silence. By subscribing, you'll be strengthening a community of people who, like you, want to live with more awareness, presence, and courage. And if you'd like, share this video with someone you know needs to hear these words. Someone whose presence also carries strength but who may not yet realize it. And of course, I want to hear from you. Write in the comments which of these signs touched you most, which you've noticed in your life, or even share your story. Your voice matters. Your experience can be the beacon that lights the way for others who, like you, have often felt misunderstood because of the silent strength they carry. Here, you'll be heard, embraced, and respected. Your presence is valuable, and your story matters. Finally, remember, your aura isn't a burden, it's a gift. It's not a barrier that pushes away, but a bridge that connects. You didn't come to the world to be small or invisible. You came to be presence, to be transformation, to be light. And that in itself is enough. Never doubt the potency that lies simply in being who you are. Thank you for staying until the end. See you in the next video, and until then, keep being that silent strength that, even unintentionally, already transforms everything around you.